So there are a couple of things, right, that we need to be aware of. One is, so there are a couple of things we need to be aware of. One is there's one big difference between US and Korea. The difference between a Han context and low context. So what does that mean? So what that means is for the US in a low context society, we're pretty direct and straightforward what we want to say and pretty just go at it pretty quickly. Now for Korea, which is high context, that means that they take things in a different way, look at the surrounding, what the meaning behind the words, and they're more indirect about directly telling you what that is. So with that, there's a lot of miscommunication if you don't have that awareness in the beginning. For example, one big example is through text. So through text, it's really hard to showcase sarcasm as it is already. Now imagine doing that with someone who has a high context language. That will cause even more confusion, right? That's one.
Your mom and I made you breakfast.
Oh, wow. So you guys are getting along?
Yeah, I guess. We're very different people, Howard, so communication's a little tricky.
Does he like the pancakes?
He didn't try them yet!
Is there any butter?
It's butter-flavored syrup.
So, what's the word?
He wants butter!
It's butter-flavored syrup!
I just told him that!
사과하지. 해요. 사과.
내가 왜 이 자식한테?
아니, 나한테.
뭐?
아저씨 때문에 지금 내 사인회가 엉망이 되고 있잖아.
그게 왜 나 때문이야 이 같아!
이렇게 머리끄댕이를 잡는데 소리를 안 지를 사람이 있나? 봐. 당신도 지르네.
아니 그러면 왜 미친놈이 애한테 해코지라는데 그냥 가만히 보고만 있어?
됐다.
정신과에서요? 미친 걸 어떻게 하셨대?
그거야. 막 말을 막 주절주절 막 이상하게 하니까.
미친년.
뭐야?
아니, 말을 막 주절주절 하시길래 미친년인 줄 알았지.
Second, is that I noticed that there's a lot of hierarchy and respect within the Korean culture versus the US. Like for example, within the US, we address everybody regardless of age, gender, by their first name. Now with Korea, there are different levels. You call people younger than you by a certain name. You address people older than you by a certain name. Also, the way you speak is very different. Like for example, people who are older expect to be respected just because of their status, age, and people who are lower are expected to serve them in a way. And that cycle kind of goes around. And kind of look at the history, it's embedded in the fact that older people get the respect, but the older people actually take care of the younger ones. So when you go out to eat in the Korean culture, normally the person who's the oldest ends up paying for everybody, right? In return, the younger one respects them because it's almost like an exchange of resources, but at the same time, there's that indirect way of cultural norms you have to adhere to. It's not laws or rules or legal legalities that you have to follow, but it's almost embedded that if you don't follow this, then you're kind of being socially shunned in some way or another. So if people don't know, there are actually 7 different levels of speech when it comes to Korean language. So they're broken into 3 big categories. The first one is being very polite. Second category is being neutral. And third category is being very casual. And the reason that matters is to be more polite to people who are older than you and less polite to people who are younger than you. And that hierarchy is actually very important within the Korean culture. And the last one of the major differences is between the individualistic and collectivism. So US is a very individualistic society. So what that means is they want to be the one to stand out what matters to them is really important. Whereas in Korea, collectivism basically means that everyone matters. People function as a unit. So if one person has some ideas, but he will actually sacrifice himself or herself for the greater good of the entire group. So but the thing is, because of that, a lot of times in the collective society, people are afraid to stand out. So you look at Korea, a lot of people have the similar styles of style, bags, clothes, and even when they get plastic surgery, of course, there's a standard beauty that everyone aims for. Whereas in the US, it's all different. Everyone has their own take on it, and people can appreciate that even though it's different. That's on that side. But if you look at COVID-19, right? So the US population, because they're focused on individualism, they want to be themselves, say, I'd rather die and than to stay home and do nothing, etc. They don't care about how they're feeling. Whereas in the Korea, actually, they are thinking about, oh, I have to wear a mask, I have to do this, not because for me, I want to make sure that I don't negatively impact other people, right? So see that difference, and because of that difference, the way we handle it when it comes to process, rules, laws are very different as well. Where in Korea, they're known to be very great at handling this case because everyone adheres to the laws, wash your hands, etc. Where in the US, people were protesting, which is for good reason, of course, but at the same time, without wearing a mask, congregating because the fact that they believe that they are more than the collective as a whole. So those are the three main arenas, I would say, between US and Korea. So the first one is basically on the high context and low context communication style. Second is the hierarchy in terms of within the social structure, what that's like. And then the third of all is the individualism versus collectivism. So that can have a very huge effect and when it comes to approaching problems, approaching life from that perspective. So if you like this episode, learn something new, interesting, please subscribe and comment below. Thanks.